everyone, and welcome to Silicon Sounds, audio for the rest of us. Today, we have a review of the Hisenior Mega5p. At the time of the purchase, this was approximately $220 USD. There was a discount code as well where you can get it for as low as 180 USD. Not exactly budget, but you get what you pay for most definitely, and even more so. It ships in a beautiful plastic case, as we can see here, very reminiscent of the cases that ship with AudioSense's higher end products. This is the DT600, which I'm going to use for comparisons at the end of this video. And for comparison's sake as well, we have on the table one of my top 3 or 4, the Ibeso IT01X, another IM which I love even up until today. So we'll move that aside and we'll concentrate on the Hisenior Mega5p. Again, retail packaging, there's a box, and in there you'll get your IEMs, which we'll look at in a second. You get a plethora of tips. You have a nice fabric insert. The box closes very securely. It's obviously of extremely good quality. Has a nice carrying handle as well. Really something that you're not going to throw away, whether you use it for your IEMs or something else. Let's take a look at the Hisenior Mega5p. Now, these IEMs are beautiful, as you can plainly see. Quite nice to look at. By the way, I am using the stock tips, which is unusual for me. Usually, have to go to third-party tips. So that's the IEM itself. Beautiful. We see the port there for air, I guess for the DD driver, and we'll talk about what's inside in a second. The mesh, very nicely made. Beautiful, smooth resin material. Can't really feel any edges. It's just stunning. Any way you slice it, a beautiful IEM. Now, before I start the actual review, I have to ramble a little bit. Please, give me a little bit of time. There have only been a few times when a product has made me actually pause and reflect on what it means to be an opinionated music lover. I do not call myself a reviewer. I am an opinionated music lover. Sometimes a hard reset is necessary so we can appreciate not only the present, but other products moving forward. Initially, I found myself, when I put these in my ear, I really found myself wanting more sparkle, more ear, more this, more that. After listening a while longer, it was made very clear that much like a junkie that starts small with their vice and then demands increase, you want more of this drug, more and more and more to get the same effect. This is what the over-embellished and unashamedly colored earphones that I had recently been listening to had done to my audio senses. I needed a reset. For someone who's attracted to musicality over everything else, the Mega5p quickly became one of the very few earphones I've had in my ears that initiated a needed hard reset, or as I like to call, analog reset. These things are very special. Now that my rambling is over, time to get into the meat of the review. It's an IEM that uses a hybrid setup with a single 10mm dynamic driver and 4 balanced armatures per side. All mated to a crossover inside. Manufacturers, are you listening? A proper crossover, which separates the frequency ranges and puts less demand on the drivers, allows them to operate in the frequency range where they're more linear. For example, the 10mm for the bass, there's 2 larger BAs, balanced armatures, that are used for the mids. And there's the other 2 are used for the highs and treble. While not being difficult to drive, the Mega5p does deserve a benefit from pairing with a careful source and cable selection. Even more so, tip selection on the Hisenior Mega5p is absolutely critical. A proper seal has to be made as deep as an insertion as you can get in order to really allow these earphones to sound the way that they should. It's on the neutral side. In fact, this is a neutral IEM. With little or no emphasis at any point in the frequency range, it will put on display what's in the track without added color, at least not relative to what seems like the majority of the market competition these days. I'll say this here. I come from home audio, and there's a mantra in home audio: straight wire with gain, which means no color, nothing added to the original source. That doesn't seem to hold true with earphones, or with speakers for that matter, but we'll talk about that another time. If deep pounding bass in the track, if it's there, you're going to hear it. If soaring treble is in there, you're going to hear it. If constant boom and sizzle are what you're after, the Mega5p is not for you. This isn't to say that it's not able to have deep pounding bass on those beautiful soaring highs, but it has to be in the track. It will play back what is in the track. It's, again, we talked about it, impedance of 19 ohms, sensitivity 112 decibels. Again, pretty easy to drive, but really benefits from quality source, and watch that tip selection. I can tell you that these are the tips I use, and for the first time, I actually used tips that came in the box. One of the few times that the tips that came in the box actually served me very well. Generally, stock tips and I don't really mesh that well, but they did very, very good. The Hisenior does ship with a number of quality tips. The cable, original cable, is an 8-core silver with silver plated, which I don't have at present. It's now being driven, well, the cable here is a K-Bear Rhyme. The original cable, which I should have had here, is quite nice, quite beautiful, something that I will keep. And that's it. So let's move on to the review. Build, fit, and quality. Well, very well built. Made of a resin material that is finished beautifully and is attractive. I am as well. It's of medium size. Fit is not a problem. It's very, very comfortable and will lend itself very well to long listening sessions. The retail packaging is reminiscent of what's seen in the DT600, as I showed before. Very nicely done. Included cable is of great quality, and are the tips. Great choice of tips as well. All in all, you're paying over 200 US for this thing, and the retail presentation is up to scratch at that price range, most definitely. Let's get into the actual sound. Bass. Well, it's not a bass head IEM. Right away, there's many who are going to say, well, look, Silicon Sounds, it's thin, it doesn't have a low end. No, 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 no. This has a definitely deep, impressive low end. Bass head meaning bass is not going to be in your face with every track. If it is in the track, if deep pounding bass is in the track, the Mega5p will play it back. It has good control, texture, and speed. It's not a bass head IEM in that if the bass is present in the source material, the 5p will reproduce it in the quantity it was recorded at. Regardless of the track, the 5p is very capable of prodigious bass output when called on. Again, if it's in the source material. Angel, song by Massive Attack that I love quite much, has a very dominant bass line, well reproduced by the 5p. It has a bass line with actual texture in it. Many IEMs that don't have the quality of bass, you will not notice the texture. It'll just sound like a thick driving bass line, but there's a texture to that bass. The rich quality of the low end was very apparent, with the texture clearly heard. Circumstance, another song I use a lot by Wayman Tisdale, the late Wayman Tisdale, showcased the positive qualities of the 5p's low end with a clean and tight bass that's really served as a solid foundation for these tracks. But all is not milk and honey. Mid bass was clean with good impact without any veil being pushed into the lower mids. So that was really good. But again, as I said before, it's not all milk and honey. If there's any negative, the last measure of bass detail can be missing sometimes and not really clearly conveyed. And also at times the bass could render just a touch thicker than optimal. Still, the Hisenior Mega5p lends itself admirably to different genres and performed very well. Now let's get to what's the real standout here, the mid-range. It's the star of the show. Being very balanced, just like the rest of the frequency spectrum, more intimate than distant with a pleasing blend of macro and micro details. This is not a detail monster to the point that it becomes distracting, but I think what Hisenior has done here with the Mega 5p is they've achieved a nice balance between macro and micro details, which allows for very extended, fatigue-free listening sessions. Not over-analytical, yet still able to convey satisfying amounts of detail. There's also a sense of warmth here, but not so much as to be distracting and definitely not to cause any veil. Once again, the mid-bass does not bleed into the lower mids. I listened to a number of tracks, including John Stoddart's impressive vocals on the track Tender-Hearted Lover. Sounded really intimate, full of the nuances, clearly audible, and really able to, the mid-range was able to convey that emotion that is in the song. Sweet Love, Caught Up in the Rapture, Anita Baker, one of my favorite female singers. Not the best recordings, but in terms of quality, but her vocal prowess was really well conveyed by the Mega 5p. It really plays back instruments like piano, drums, and acoustic double bass very well, which is really a test to the level of timbral accuracy that the Mega 5p portrays, which is interesting. Being a hybrid with four drivers, four BA drivers, and a dynamic driver with a crossover, obviously time has been spent to meld these together nicely. Very smooth transitions, almost inaudible transitions, just a smooth performance overall, while still being able to portray a very high level of timbral accuracy. Handling of transients is very impressive as well, which goes hand in hand with everything else, makes it feel more organic. Transients are very difficult, as seen in a lot of products that I've listened to deal with. Either they're too strong in the beginning, too sharp, or they trail off too quickly, or they last too long. On this, it just sounds natural. I will say that I'm of the audiophile kind of schooling where a timbral accuracy and general accuracy in general for these particular type of IAMs or anything you listen to is best heard with acoustic instruments. Why is that? Because we know what they really sound like in real life. A synthesizer, you never know what it really sounds like. It is synthesizing the sound. It's not real, okay? So when you hear something like the Robert Glasper Trio, who use a large piano, obviously not a keyboard style, double bass, and a drum kit, and that is all, you can really appreciate what the Mega 5p can present to you. It sounds organic, it sounds beautiful. Again, the handling of transients is impressive. Clean with believable attack and decay. There's no doubt that this helped a lot and carried along by the good timbral accuracy and balanced presentation. Chocolate Chip Trip by Tool is a great little, if you haven't listened to that track, give it a try. Serves to showcase the transient prowess of the Mega 5p. Very fun listen, to be sure. The drums, the kick drums really sounded heavy, but just beautiful. No overhang, very little overhang. Once again, the mids are really the star of the show. The bass is exceptionally good, but really stands in the background as compared to the quality of the mid-range. If there's any negative in the mids, I would be really nitpicking here. I would say that layer separation, while being exceptionally good, is not up to what we hear in, for example, the AudioSense DT600, which is a layer separation and micro detail champion. But in terms of musicality and timbral accuracy, the Mega 5p does take the crown. So there's a little bit of comparison right there. Treble. Treble is reasonably extended. I would say it's well extended and detailed. Once again, as with the bass and more so the mid-range, the treble really depends on the source material. If the source material is well recorded and has clean extended treble, you're going to hear it. If it's not in the source, you're not going to hear it. One thing I have to add is that the Mega 5p is very forgiving of poorly recorded material. It's not going to be in your face, telling you that it was badly recorded and exposing every flaw like in some other IEMs. That being said, you will know the difference between good recording and a bad recording, as the 5P will play back whatever is there. When first listening to the 5P, I found the treble to be underwhelming, to be honest. This was soon found to be due to the source material, and more so the fact that the previous earphones I was listening to had a clearly enhanced treble. Brightness, here folks, brightness does not equal detail. And this was made very apparent when listening to the 5P. I would have other earphones near me, listening to them, put on the 5P. Oh, it sounded a little less bright, maybe even slightly dull, but the detail was greater. Brightness does not equal detail. Imaging and soundstage. It throws up a soundstage that is more intimate than expansive, with height and depth are all in believable proportions, not exceptionally wide with no height and no depth, which sounds unnatural. Again, as with everything it seems with this earphone, balance is what it's about. Stimula by the late great Hugh Masekela, a track I use, a live track, sounded wonderful with an intimate soundstage. Imaging was solid and instrument placement was easily discerned. Not as pinpoint accurate as the AudioSense DT600 with its crazy amount of detail retrieval, but still exceptionally well, and particularly for the price. So let's talk about comparisons. Let me pull this in. So here we have the AudioSense DT600, one of my favorite. This is an all BA earphone. If you think that BA earphones don't have bass, listen to a DT600. It'll change your mind. AudioSense did a fantastic job tuning this thing. I remember the specs right offhand, but there's at least 5, 6, or 7 BAs in here. Again, crossover network, everything is beautifully done. So let's talk about the comparisons between this and the Mega5p. Well, bass is tighter on the DT600, while the 5P definitely goes deeper with more energy, if it's in the track, once again. Mid-range displays greater micro details on the DT600, while the 5P has the edge in organics, natural sound, timbre, and musicality. Treble with respect to micro details for the DT600, that's where it wins, while organics and sweetness is superior on the Hisenior Mega5p. Pick your poison. You want a listening session where you want to hear every little detail of pins dropping and whatnot, DT600. You want a musical experience to take you for hours, Mega5p. Both keepers. iBasso IT01X. Since I've purchased these, I've loved them. Had a good vibe on them, bought them sight unseen. Didn't really hear them, and I've loved them. As with most earphones that really have been worth my while, the iBasso did take a while to get where they are now in terms of tip selection, and definitely need to be driven with a good source. It's a single dynamic driver, both sides coated, beryllium coated driver. So let's talk about the comparisons between the two. Bass is fuller on the 5P and has more impact in the deepest ranges. Speed, texture, detail is very close between the two. Mid-range is close, with both having an more intimate than distant presentation and similar ratio of micro versus macro details. In terms of organics, I'd have to give the nod to the 5P. It's a slight nod. And that's about as far as I'll go with that. They're both very nice, very good timbre, very good organics, but the 5P does get a slight nod here. Treble is very similar. Both offer a sweet treble that is a pleasure to listen to. I'd also have to give the nod here to the 5P being that just much more balanced. Again, you put these in your ear and you realize what balance really is. If it's driven properly and you have a good seal with proper tips and good insertion. Critical on the 5P. Critical. Those things are critical. So, conclusion. Hisenior have a winner here. The Mega5p is a definite winner. Balanced from top to bottom with a pleasing organic sonics. This is a welcome departure from the majority of the market, who are more often than not They try to get your attention with a little extra of this and a little bit of that. Embellishments, over embellishments. Unnecessary if you're into musicality and quality music playback. The 5P though does demand some time tip and cable rolling. I would say quite a bit of your time. Initially, it's not just popping them in your ear. It's also getting the tips that really fit well and with a deep insertion as possible. So it really deserves also to be driven by a quality source. Is the Hisenior Mega5p for everyone? The answer to that is no. But let me qualify what I'm trying to tell you. Because this isn't it's not because it's not a stellar performer. It is a stellar performer. More so due to the fact that its owner should be someone who prioritizes musicality over everything else and can appreciate how balanced it performs. It plays what's in the source material and more than most stays out of the way otherwise. Silicon Sounds gives the Hisenior Mega5p a very strong recommendation. Thank you all for joining me for this video review in this new format. Please excuse me, I seem to have a cold. My voice is a little bit off, but it was so much fun bringing this to you. And like and share. Also check the links down below for the blog site, the newly launched blog site, siliconsounds.com, where you'll see the written version of this review and many other reviews, and also links to reviews and comments and commentary from trusted sources. Thank you very much. Have a great day, everybody.